Hello everyone, I am Tessellating Hexagons, and yesterday was the much anticipated grand final of Pabandom Iżnaujo 2021, whose name translates to Let's Try Again 2021, and that kind of takes on a whole new meaning in a year like the one that we've just had. Anyway, it is, as the name implies, the national final vehicle for Lithuania, which means we now have Lithuania's equally hotly anticipated entry for 2021. You might recall that last year, at the time that the contest was cancelled, Lithuania were number one in the betting odds to win the whole thing, and similar rumblings have been happening this year. So this year, Lithuania will once again be represented by Vaidotas Valiukevičius, Robertas Baranauskas, Mantas Banišauskas. Together, they're known as the Roop. The song is called Discoteque, and yes, it is deliberately, intentionally misspelled, because the quote-unquote correct spelling, there's an H in there, there's a grave accent on the E. The Roop have deliberately left that out here because, in their own words, this song is about a different kind of discotheque. Music by Vaidotas, Robertas and Mantas with the help of Laisvūnas Černovas and Ilkka Virtanen, and lyrics by Vaidotas and Mantas as well as Kanne Lindroth. The song is completely in English, making it the first entry of 2021 so far that actually is completely in English. And, people have thoughts about this song, so let's just jump right in and see what mine are. In the name of absolute fairness, I chose not to have any expectations whatsoever for Lithuania this year, and that includes putting aside any preconceptions that the Roop would automatically win Pabandom Iżnaujo. After all, if memory doesn't fail me, they did take part in the selection in 2018, and they came, I think, fourth, second, and third over the various rounds of the show, so you know, it's not as if they've not taken part and not won in the past, so I thought it wasn't impossible for that to happen again this year, but fear not, they absolutely served. With a song that, dare I say it, I actually like more than On Fire, which was their entry last year. Yes, indeed, in my personal opinion, which you are absolutely free to disagree with, I welcome that. You do you, I'll do me. I'm inclined to believe that while being who they are certainly helped them win the national final off the back of last year's hype, I do think that this song won the selection, and by a landslide of almost 70,000 public votes, by the way, on the merits of its own strength. Literally, the only thing I would personally change about it is the line, let's discotheque right at my home. I would swap in right here at home, just to make it sound more naturally fluid to a native-speaking ear, but honestly, part of the Roop's appeal is that they're not interested in that kind of nitpicky feedback, and I completely respect that. As ever, let's kick things off with the positive points about this song that you might like. First off, I have to praise the Roop's artistry on so many levels. If you look at the video description of the music video, which I highly encourage you to do, you'll find that there were so many deliberate choices that the group put a lot of thought into with this song, and the writing of it, the singing of it, the presentation of it, like the staccato rhythm of the refrain, the mouth sounds in the breakdown near the end, the choreography, and, indeed, the title, the spelling of the title, and the message of the whole thing. Here and now, obviously it's incredibly easy to make the connection between the message of this song and dancing alone at home in lockdown, but I put it to you, lovely people, that this song could just as easily exist in any other year. Like, listen to it in 15 years' time when this craziness is all, a dim and distant memory. It would still, it wouldn't sound dated. They've taken a very up-to-the-minute contemporary message that would lose all relevance quickly, and they have made it be timeless, you feel? And for that matter, I want to praise the overall message anyway. Not just, it's okay to dance alone, but it is okay to dance alone. It's defiant, almost, saying, forget what other people say. Forget about high school bullies who are like, ha ha, loner. I've never understood that, by the way. Forget all that. You be you. That's great. It's so incredibly wholesome and empowering in this song, and while it is something that people would benefit from hearing in the age of quarantines and social distancing anyway, it's something that still has meaning and impact even outside of those circumstances. If nothing else, I, for one, find reassurance in it, speaking as someone who legitimately suffers from chronic anxiety. Stepping away from all of that, he says, rotating in a circle and not stepping in any which direction at all, let's also consider that this is another song from the 2021 lineup that's coming to the table armed to the teeth with strong potential for live staging. The music video makes it look like it might be hard to translate into a stage performance, but the national final demonstrates that they are more than capable of carrying it over easily. There's the striking colour of their outfits, playing against the black and white checkerboard pattern in the background, and the occasional use of purple, though that's more music video than staging, but still, it makes everything stand out just as much as it's supposed to, and it really highlights their choreography, which is always a central part of what the Roop brings. And the best part is, they make the whole delivery look so effortless, and I mean that as the highest possible compliment. It's like how, if you see a duck moving along a body of water, it looks like it's just gliding along, it's not doing anything, but under the surface, it's kicking its legs and putting a lot of work in to make that look so smooth. The Roop is like a duck in that regard. They take all of these deep thoughts, complex ideas, and impactful choreography and present it smoothly in a head-turning, eye-catching 3-minute bop that looks as easy and natural to them as breathing, whilst still being extremely convincing and compelling. Sveikiname! Still, remember, this song is fairly widely hyped up, but as I always say, just because other people like this song does not mean that absolutely everyone will or should or must, and that's totally fine. For instance, the song opens with some spoken word lyrics, and that can be an instant turn-off for some people. I mean, hey, it has worked in the past, look at Armenia 2016, but I'm on the fence about it on a conceptual level at least, because it's easy to do, but really hard to do well. But it's the Roop. In my opinion, I think it's done well, but there is still that kind of sort of reflex at hearing spoken word stuff, and I have to overcome that before I can fully appreciate it, and there are others who I'm sure would struggle even more to sort of mentally get past that opening part. Something else that can sort of set off a gag reflex in some people, based on other acts doing it badly in the past, is the so-called section C of the song, to use the group's own words. You know, the bit with all the mouth sounds. It's especially difficult to listen to if you have misophonia, which is like the dislike of mouth sounds and chewing and all that stuff. But I think the real issue that a lot more people would find with that part of the song, especially when taken into consideration alongside the staccato delivery of the refrain, it can lend the song a feeling of disjointedness. And if you don't have the patience for it, and some people won't, it might put you off. That's fine, that's not their fault, it's not the song's fault, tastes vary, that's life. Taking that thought to its logical extreme, meanwhile, we have something that I'm fairly sure I said last year as well, that the Roop's whole aesthetic, especially amplified by the mouth sounds, the spoken word intro, and just how they look and present themselves, that whole aesthetic might put people off right from the get-go. This is by no means a run-of-the-mill act in any capacity. The Roop are quirky, unique, and highly artistic, so to some people who don't want to invest any interest in it, it might come across as pretentious or weird for the sake of weird. I'm fairly sure that the United Kingdom's broadcaster, for instance, is probably going to point at them and go, "Ha ha, funny, foreigners being weird," and like, congratulations, you missed the entire point, but some people will feel that way, and that is worth acknowledging. And as a result, it makes it harder for people to take the song seriously. Don't get me wrong, I don't want the Roop to change for the sake of those people, but at the same time, I do want everyone else to be aware that there are those people out there who struggle to take the song seriously because of the wackiness, and their feelings are valid too, okay? Okay. But enough about what other people think, because clearly the only person whose thoughts matter are mine. How did I start this sentence? Anyway, I almost feel like I'm rushing into things here, but I'm inclined to give this a personal score of 10 out of 10. I think it's far too soon to predict whether or not this will be my number one for this year, and knowing my tastes, something will probably come out of the woodwork later down the line that just hits different and usurps it. But for the time being, this is honestly something that I struggle to find any personal fault with in my personal subjective opinion. I like what the Roop stands for. I appreciate the layers they've put into this song on every level, and taking all of that away, I just find it to be a musical delight to just put on, bop along to. Of course, don't expect me to turn into a toxic hyper stan by any means, but I am probably going to be voting for this song on the night of the contest. It's a fun time. On the technical side, meanwhile, thinking as a juror, I'm leaning more towards a 9 out of 10 because while there's a lot of intelligence, thought, and, as I keep coming back to, artistry embedded in this song, it is worth keeping in mind that only a fraction of that will actually come across to the average viewer. Few people will actually take the time to think that hard about it, or do the research, or look into what the artist's intent was. I wonder, for instance, how many people will even realise that the title is misspelled in the first place, and of those, how many people will realise that the misspelling is intentional and symbolic? I feel like that's going to be lost on a lot of people, so that sort of undermines the artistry a bit if it doesn't quite land. On top of that, the staccato rhythm, the sudden gear shift during the so-called part C of the song, it can feel a bit jarring and, at worst, cobbled together. Tastes will vary. I don't feel that personally, but I do have to acknowledge that the effect is present and will affect some people. Nevertheless, don't get me wrong, I think Lithuania should be more than proud of this entry. I think it could very well have won the national final, even if last year just hadn't happened at all. Like, if we'd jumped straight from 2019, Run with the Lions, Urias, and then just suddenly, there was no 2020. 2021, the Roop's in the national final. Ooh, haven't heard of them since 2018. Ah, what's their song? Discoteque. Oh, well, that's the favourite, that's one. I feel like that would have happened even without On Fire and its hype. I hope that makes any sense whatsoever. But 2020 did happen, so how is this as a response to that? Well, realistically, my stance is that Lithuania gets the green circle of job well done, and they would do even if the Roop hadn't won the national final. Because obviously it's good that, the Roop are being acknowledged as, hey, you won last year, you've earned the right to go to the contest, you couldn't go to the contest last year, so go this year. Obviously that's a good thing. But the Lithuanian broadcaster has demonstrated an alternative way of being utterly exemplary in addressing the cancellation. To recap, they decided to have their national final as usual, but they gave the Roop an automatic pass straight into the final round, whilst everyone else had to qualify through preliminary heats. So they have that advantage going into it as a reward for being chosen last year, but they also have the incentive to bring their absolute A game if they want to be chosen again. After all, as their not quite successful attempt from an earlier year shows, it was the song that won it for them, ultimately. Without having to compete against other acts who know how hard they have to work if they want to try to overcome the hype train, the odds would have been that much higher that the resulting song could have turned out less impressive. Does that make any sense at all? The idea is, the other acts want to try hard to overturn their hype, and so the Roop want to make sure that they earn the victory rather than just coasting through to the top, and I think they've done that. That's what I'm getting at here. But with all of that in place, I think the Roop are an absolute shoo-in to reach the final in Rotterdam. No matter which angle I view it from, the answer remains the same. The public have already demonstrated their love for the group, considering that Lithuania were, as I said, #1 in the betting odds at the time of last year's cancellation, and also the fact that Discoteque has already broken streaming records for Lithuania, and it won the national final after receiving an 86.5% stake of the public votes, with almost 70,000 more than second place, need I remind you. And let's not forget that the jury also rated it incredibly highly. Internationally, the Roop are currently looked upon incredibly favourably, so I can imagine a similarly positive reception being as good as inevitable almost. Despite what I said about how the UK is probably going to present this entry, I think the UK public will definitely have a boatload of points to offer to this one, for instance, and I'm sure other countries will too. And this is without taking into consideration that it's literally the jury's job to look for and acknowledge this kind of intelligence and uniqueness in competing entries. Does this mean the song will win the contest as a whole? I think it is far too soon to bet on that whatsoever. We only have 5 entries at the time of recording this, so it's a waste of breath to scream, "Obvious winner! Everyone else can go home!" Not to mention, forcing that opinion on other people is an incredibly toxic behaviour anyway, please don't do it. But we can at least be sure that the odds are in the Roop's favour this year, once again. But that's just my thoughts on the song. As ever, listen for yourself, come to your own conclusions, have your own thoughts, and talk to me. The comments are always open. I want to hear what you have to say. In the meantime, though, Lithuania, Vaidotas and crew, live long and prosper, I guess. And I can't wait to see what you bring to the stage in May.